Hey everybody, welcome to the Mana Leek. I'm John as always, and we are here for the Red M21 limited set review. We're going to talk about all the red cards from a limited perspective, how they are. We are currently live on Twitch. You can see Twitch chat above. They are giving their ratings via this heat map here. So you should follow and make sure you're checking out the live streams because this is fun. Anyways, we're going to get started with the first card, which is Rattle Shaman, which is fun to say. Rattle Shaman is 3 and a red for a creature, goblin, shaman at uncommon. It's a 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target creature get +2/+0 until end of turn. Rattle Shaman is totally okay. I don't know where I've played this, but I've played this at least a few times. I don't know what set I've played this in. It was not the original set. It is a totally solid card. It's a 2/2 for 4, which is obviously not good, but it attacks like a 4/2 if you activate it on itself. But the nice thing here on like many cards that we see is it doesn't have to attack for that trigger to happen. It happens all the time regardless. So your 2/2 can hang back and give your Colossal Dreadmaw +2, turning it into an 8/6 trample. It's a very solid card for your attacky decks. Especially kind of like the stompy and or trample-y decks. So I think this is a strong C+, unless you're not attacking. I don't know what deck you're playing if you're not. Up next is Hound. Hound is 2 and a red for a creature elemental dog at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with haste. Whenever Hound attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Hey, look, it's exactly what I was just talking about. This creature has to attack to get the trigger. But at least it's half a Trumpet Blast here. This is just a nice aggressive creature. If you, especially in red-white, which is the dog color. There's not exactly dog support beyond Pack Leader, I don't believe. But yeah, it's a totally fine card if you're turning things sideways, because this makes you turn things sideways a little bit harder. And a 3-mana 2/2 haste is totally okay as well. This is a C+, assuming that you are attacky. If you are not, if you're a little bit more, big thing trample-y or etc., this card maybe doesn't make the deck. So this waffles between C+ and C, probably. It's not a huge range on this card, but it also is definitely not a B. And yes, it has flavor text that says its spark is worse than its bite. Up next is Bone Pit Brute. Bone Pit Brute is 4 red for a creature Cyclops at common. It's a 4/5 with menace. When Bone Pit Brute enters the battlefield, target creature gets +4/+0 until end of turn. Welcome to the club. 6 mana for a 4/5 menace is not exciting. It's not exciting. We have Colossal Dreadmaw in this set. We have a 6/6 trample for 6. Giving a creature +4/+0 is okay. I would want to give that to a flyer. I would want to give that to a trampler. If I don't, I feel pretty sad. I think this card is just like a C-, just because putting a 6-drop in your deck needs to be impactful, and I don't think this is impactful. Yeah, C- for Bone Pit Brute. There's better cards out there. Up next is Brash Taunter. Brash Taunter is 4 and a red for a creature goblin at rare. It's a 1/1. It's indestructible. Whenever Brash Taunter is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. Pay 2 and a red, tap it. Brash Taunter fights another target creature. It's Stuffy Doll for the modern era. It's a 1/1 for 5. It's a little bit expensive, but what it does is insane. Unless your opponent is attacking you with nothing but flyers or nothing but unblockable, this card blocks their biggest thing and throws that damage back in their face. And not only that, at the end of their turn, because they're not going to attack into this because they know what's going to happen, at the end of their turn, you just force this thing to fight with that big thing and deal the damage. This is a pretty decent card. The one problem here is that it is 5 mana, and that if your opponent doesn't have something big and beefy, what's it doing? Right? There's a lot of mana that you have to sink into this, and so I think the one potential problem is I don't know where it goes. I do think it might actually go in the blue-red spells deck, because you're going to be looking to get to the later game. You're going to be looking to have some way of getting more damage through. This is kind of a pinger in the blue-red spells deck, which is exactly what the blue-red spells deck would want. But yeah, it is a lot of damage. Trample does make it a little bit embarrassing, but we can do a quick check here for how much trample is in the set, because I don't know if there's a ton. At common, there's 5 cards that say the word trample. Yeah, that's a fair bit. At uncommon, There are 4. There might be a fair bit of trample. There might be a fair bit. This could be a card that could go either way. I'm going to start pretty high on this. I'm going to start very optimistically on it. You do need to make sure you're putting this in the right deck, though. It does not go in your aggro deck. You don't want a 5-drop that is a 1/1. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to start at a B+. Optimistic. I may be wildly wrong. Maybe this is a C. Maybe this is an A. Who knows? Up next is Burn Bright. Burn Bright is 2 and a red for an instant at common. Creatures you control get +2/+0. It's Trumpet Blast, except you can use it defensively, except don't use it defensively. If you're using it defensively, you're using it wrong. It's a Trumpet Blast. If you're an aggro deck, this is going to make you win harder and faster, and that's what the aggro deck wants to do. This can make you win on turn 5, turn 6. It is a C+ if you are a go-wide aggro deck. If you are not, don't play it. Up next is Chandra, Heart of Fire. Chandra, Heart of Fire is 3 red for a legendary planeswalker Chandra. At Mythic, she starts with 5 loyalty. Good vanilla loyalty test there. +1, discard your hand, then exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may play cards exiled this way. +1, part 2, Chandra, Heart of Fire deals 2 damage to any target. -9, search your graveyard and library for any number of red instant and or sorcery cards, exile them, then shuffle your library. You may cast them this turn. Add 6 mana to help you cast them. Chandra seems pretty good. Discarding your hand is obviously a big downside until it's not. If you don't have anything in your hand, you still get those 3 cards. So it's a fine +1. And if you don't want to discard your hand, that's why she has the other +1, which is Shock on a Stick to any target. -9 if you happen to get there, which doesn't take too long. She's going to be 6 the turn she comes down. 7, 8, 9. Probably don't want to kill her off, but maybe that is enough. Yeah, she's just very good. We're really talking about, is this an A+ or an A or an A-? I don't think it's an A-. I think she's just a very, very, very solid A. She does a lot of work, and as we'll see very shortly, there's a lot of burn in this format. So finding all of the burn could be pretty good. So yeah, let's go with a strong A for Chandra, Heart of Fire. Up next is Chandras Incinerator. Chandras Incinerator is 5 and a red for a creature elemental at rare. It's a 6/6. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. I want to put this card in my Canlander deck. It's got Trample. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandras Incinerator deals that much damage to a creature or planeswalker that player controls. So obviously this goes into the burn deck because you want to be getting this out for cheaper, and you want to be getting that second ability there to pick off their creatures while you're also burning their face. It's also a 6/6 trample for 6. This is an easier to cast Colossal Dreadmaw, and we all love Colossal Dreadmaw, right? This card seems very good. I think it's like a very strong C+ if you have no non-combat damage in your deck whatsoever. And if you do have non-combat damage in your deck, I think this can jump up to like a B+, if you build around it properly. But the fact that it is a 6/6 trample for 6, I think is good enough. Obviously, in your low-cost Boros aggro deck, you don't want this, but in your red-green deck, you're pretty darn happy with it. So C+ at an absolute floor, and really more of a B. Up next is Chandras Magmut. Chandras Magmut is 1 and a red for a creature elemental dog at common. It's a 2/2. Tap it to deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. It's not a prodigal sorcerer because it doesn't hit creatures. That's still okay. People underrate pingers to the opponent's face. It's fine. It's a bear with an upside, and the upside's actually good here. So we actually are going to go with a C+ on this. It's a common. They stack very well in multiples. Dealing 2 damage a turn, 3 damage a turn is really nice. Comes down early. I like pingers quite a bit. If I can get my hands on like 4 of these in a deck one time, I'm going to walk away from this format liking it. Strong C+ for Chandras Magmut. Don't underestimate pingers, even if they don't hit creatures. It's also a dog, I guess. Up next is Chaundras Pyrling. Chaundras Pyrling is 1 and a red for a creature elemental lizard at uncommon. It's a 1/3. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, like the Magmut, Chaundras Pyrling gets +1/+0 and gains double strike until end of turn. It's a 1/3 for 2. Okay. It's not awful. It's like a C-. And then if I burn, it's a 2/3 with double strike. I don't know. I don't think this is very good. I don't think this is enough. There's better burn payoffs that we've seen. It's still fine. It's still fine. I guess there's the threat of activation here. There's definitely a threat of activation here. So I think this is fine. So I'm going to give this like a strong C+ if you are in that deck. If you're not activating this much, it's a C-. You should just probably not play it. But if you're activating it, I think we can go up to a C+. I think the problem here is that we can't do, like, in limited anyways, we can't really do multiple activations on this. I guess we can if we have multiple Magmuts. But, like, the odds of us casting, like, 3 different spells and having the mana for it and having those cards in hand to trigger this 3 times is pretty low. I'll keep an eye on this. It could be uncommon for a reason. I will say this is part of the Planeswalker common, uncommon, rare cycle. So it could be uncommon just because it's part of that cycle, not because it's good. Keep an eye on it. C+ if you build around it. Up next is Conspicuous Snoop. Conspicuous Snoop is red for a creature goblin rogue at rare. It is a 2/2. Play with the top card of your library revealed. Okay. You may cast goblin spells from the top of your library. Cool. As long as the top card of your library is a goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop has all activated abilities of the revealed card. I looked this up beforehand and I was very disappointed, and I'll do it again just so I can disappoint all of you. There are 4 goblins in the set, and we've already seen 3 of them. None of them one of them has activated abilities. This card doesn't actually do anything in this format. This is for Commander. This is a hard to cast 2/2 for 2 that does nothing. It's a C-. It's a hard to cast 2/2. It's like a D. You just shouldn't play this card. There's just not the payoffs for it. Now, Goblin Commander deck, Canlander deck, Brawl, whatever, you're probably going to do some really weird things with this. Limited, no. Up next is Crash Through. Crash Through is a single red mana for a sorcery at common. Creatures you control gain trample until end of turn, draw a card. I've never really liked Crash Through. Giving everybody trample is cool. Drawing a card is cool. Sorcery speed is not cool. Your opponent knows what's going on. They know how they have to block. So I've never really liked Crash Through. I have it as like a C-. It's a card, not even a C-. I have it like a D. It's a card I don't really want to play. If you have big beefy things, a lot of them have trample anyways in this set. It does tend to do some work in Blue-Red Spells deck when the Blue-Red Spells deck has incredible payoffs. And as much as I want the Blue-Red Spells deck to really exist in this format, we haven't seen like incredible payoffs for it. I don't think we've seen any yet in red. I can't really think of blue. There's prowess, and it's okay in prowess. So, you know, if it's Blue-Red Spells, this is probably the best place for it, and I still think it's like a C there. Up next is Destructive Tampering. Destructive Tampering is 2 and a red for a sorcery at common. Choose 1, destroy target artifact or creatures without flying can't block this turn. This is, if you are all out aggro, it is a main deckable card, because creatures without flying can't block ends the game frequently. But that is only if you are a super fast, go wide, heavy duty aggro. Otherwise, this card should be sitting in your main deck, or sorry, in your sideboard to blow up an artifact. The artifacts don't really matter in this set too much. And you need to side it out if you're against flyers. So know where and when to play this, but this is just a D. It's not a great card. Yeah, you can still probably just win by attacking even without this. But it is a nice thing to keep in mind for that. Up next is Double Vision. Double Vision is 3 red for an enchantment at rare. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. I don't know. I don't know about this card. I'm going to have to play this card to really find out. My first instinct was that it was not very good, but that's because I'm so used to this being a spell that copies one thing once. This copies things every time. Forever. But you have to pay 5 mana for it, which means you have to get there, which means you've already cast some of the instants and sorceries that you want to copy. A number of your instants and sorceries, well, not a number, very few actually, I would say, are ones that you want to copy. Yeah, I'm going to have to play with this. This is obviously a build around. It's obviously for the Blue-Red Spells deck and or the Burn deck, which is probably also Blue-Red now that I think about it. I don't know. 5 mana hurts this a lot, I think. So I'm going to keep this low. I've been optimistic on a few grades. I'm going to start this one out as like a D, but definitely a build around. I don't know. I'm going to be the most wrong about this card, I think. So let's start with a D for Double Vision. Up next is Fiery Emancipation. Fiery Emancipation is 3 red for an enchantment at mythic. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead. 6 mana, super duper hard to cast, but all of your damage is tripled, and not your opponent's damage. Man, on the battlefield, this is like an A+. On the battlefield and you don't have a board state, it's an F. Odds are this is one of those cards where you're going to lose to it because you were probably going to lose the game anyways, or you're going to win the game because you were going to win the game anyways, and this just makes you win harder. I do realistically think this is probably closer to like a D or maybe even an F, just because the issue is like it does nothing for you if you're not already doing super well. Like, even in a board stalls typically occur because neither of you can attack. This triples the damage, but it doesn't triple the toughness. So even if you attack, they're going to do all the blocks that they were going to do anyways and keep you dead. So I don't know if this has a home. I'm going to keep this at a D. I think it's just too hard to cast. Up next is Furious Rise. Furious Rise is 2 and a red for an enchantment at uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until you exile another card with Furious Rise. Hey look, the red-green deck in M21 is just the red-green deck from Theros. Great new design. Yeah, Furious Rise was okay in Theros. I think it'll be okay-ish here. It was not good by any stretch of the imagination. We're talking about like C or C-. Yeah, it was okay, but there were also times where it was not okay. Yeah, I think it's just okay. I'm going to go for a C on it. I liked it a little bit more than some people did, but I'm not going to go any higher than that. It's so bad when you play it, and it does nothing. Up next is Fuhrer of the Bitten. Fuhrer of the Bitten is a single red mana for an enchantment aura at common. It's a not anything. It doesn't have power and toughness. It's an enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and attacks each combat if able. Meh. +2/+2 and no evasion. Not really a big fan. Having to attack every turn. I mean, you're probably going to do that anyways, but I'm not a big fan of this. There's just better things to do. I would rather, in my go wide decks, in my aggro decks, I'd rather have my trumpet blasts. I'd rather have something that gives evasion, something that gives trample, not +2/+2 and must attack each combat as able. This is like a C-. Throw it in if you're, your deck didn't quite get there and you just really need to win by turn 5, or lose if you haven't won by turn 5. C- for Fuhrer of the Bitten. Up next, we have Gadrak the Crown Scourge. Gadrak the Crown Scourge is 2 and a red for a legendary creature dragon at rare. It's a 5/4 flyer. Why is it so cheap? Gadrak the Crown Scourge can't attack unless you control 4 or more artifacts. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. I didn't read the last bit of that the first time that I read this card. So it's a 5/4 flyer for 3. That's obviously nuts, but it just can't attack. You need to kill creatures in order to get the treasures to attack with it, or you need to be playing artifacts, and the artifacts in this set are not great, generally. There's some that are fine, some that are good. I don't know about this. I don't know. It's obviously 100% deck dependent. You need to be killing creatures to get the treasures at least. I guess if you're in the sacrifice deck, you can be sacrificing creatures to make these tokens. It can block. That's super true. It's a 5/4 blocker for 3. So actually this reminds me quite a bit of Wayward Swordtooth, which was a 5/5 couldn't block, right? It doesn't remind me of that. It reminds me of something. So actually, you know what? I think this is pretty okay just because of the defender. It can block. Lovestruck Beast is a 5/5 that could block. Yeah, you know what? This is actually pretty okay. I'm going to give this a B just because stuff's going to die. You will get there with the treasures, whether it be through you just killing things naturally, whether it be through you being the red-black sack deck and sacrificing things to help get there, and whether it be you just playing some extra artifacts to get this going. So yeah, I think this is a strong B. Don't go nuts on playing a bunch of bad artifacts just to enable this, because what if this is the bottom of your deck? And then all you do is play a bunch of bad artifacts. you don't have a good deck. So don't go playing bad cards for this card, but I think it is a B for Gadrak. Up next is our only remaining goblin, Goblin Arsonist. Goblin Arsonist is a single red mana for a creature goblin shaman at common. It's a 1/1. Whenever it dies, well, when it dies, it only dies once. You may have it deal 1 damage to any target. This is an okay card in the black-red sack deck. It's a great card to sacrifice because you're going to deal a damage, and you're going to get whatever the bonus is that you get from sacrificing it. Plus, you can attack on turn 2 maybe and get in for a damage. And then at some point you can attack in, and they either block it and they take 1, or they don't block it and they take 1. It's not a lot of damage, but it's some. It's a C. I don't think we go up to C+ quite. Even in the black-red sack deck, I do feel like there's better things to sack. But it's an option there, so it's a C for Goblin Arsonist. Up next is Goblin Wizardry. Goblin Wizardry is 3 and a red for an instant at common. Create 2 1/1 red Goblin Wizard creature tokens with prowess. 4 mana. Obviously, I'd prefer to make 2 1/1s for 2 mana, like Raise the Alarm, or was it Raise the Alarm? Was that sorcery? Was that instant? I think it was an instant. But these ones have prowess. That's nifty. Prowess is nice. This obviously really helps out the red-blue spells deck. I guess prowess is the real big payoff for red-blue spells. So I think if you're in the red-blue spells deck, this gets a little bit better. It's a spell itself. It's not crazy good. You know, this is definitely on the lower end of cards that I want for that deck, so I think it is still just a C. I don't think it ever gets crazy good. But yeah, C. And if you're not taking advantage of all aspects of this, if you're not taking advantage of prowess, the fact that it's an instant, etc., then you probably shouldn't play it. Up next is Havoc Jester. Havoc Jester is 4 and a red for a creature devil at uncommon. It's a 5/5. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, Havoc Jester deals 1 damage to any target. Here's our sack payoff. And it's not bad. It's a 5/5 for 5, so it's already okay vanilla test. And we get to just ping things. Probably pinging the opponent's face, because 1 damage probably isn't going to kill a lot of things. It'll kill things after combat. It'll kill things if you sacrifice a lot of things. But it is a decent little payoff. So if you're in the black-red sack deck, this I think is one of the cards that you want. Unfortunately, it's an uncommon, so you're not even guaranteed to get it. So, I don't know. We'll see how the black-red sack deck looks. It looks a little bit like what we've seen before, where black-red is the sack deck. And it's not exactly supported well enough to exist. So we'll see. We'll see. But in the sack deck, I think this is like a C+. I still don't think we go up to the B range just because of the 5 mana. 5 mana for 1 damage. 1 damage repeatable. C+ for it in the black-red sack deck. Hopefully we see better black-red sack payoffs. Up next is Heartfire Immolator. Heartfire Immolator is 1 and a red for a creature human wizard at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with prowess. Pay red, sacrifice Heartfire Immolator. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker. So it's a 2/2 for 2 with prowess. That's decent, and we can pay red to shock something or perhaps bolt or even do something higher. That's pretty cool as well. It sacrifices itself, so it triggers demon. There's a whole lot going on here. I think this card's good. I don't think B is correct. B is too high for just a 2/2 with prowess that also shocks. I think we can go B- on it, though. I think it is a little bit better than just a bear with the upside. I think there's 2 upsides here. So I think we can go to a B- on Heartfire Immolator. I think it's just good. It's just fine. It's a creature that will deal some damage, and then at some point when you need it to, be removal. Or, yeah, it's only creature, unfortunately, so it will only be removal. It won't be to face. Up next is Hellkite Punisher. Hellkite Punisher is 5 red for a creature dragon at uncommon. It's a 6/6 flyer with fire breathing. Pay a red to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. It's big flyer. It hits face and does damage. You know, it's a dragon. It's an incredibly expensive dragon, which means you're not playing it in your aggro decks. You're playing it in your red-green deck if you're ramping to it. If you happen to be kicking around the black reanimation spell in your black-red deck, you reanimate it, I guess. But otherwise, it's just a big, dumb thing that wins the game, but you have to get there. So, you know, it's a hard card to grade, really, because it is very deck dependent. In a red-white Boros aggro deck, this is an F. You should not play it. and in a red-green big stompy deck, preferably with a bit of ramp, this is much more like a C+, or even upwards of a B-. I would want a little bit more to make it a true B-. So let's go C+ on it, but know when you should not play this, which is an amount of the time. Up next is Hobblefiend. Hobblefiend is 1 and a red for a creature devil at common. It's a 2/1 with trample. Pay 1, sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Hobblefiend. So here's our sack outlet. Pretty cheap, not free, but pretty cheap. No color restriction is nice. Getting a counter is nice, but I'm going to want a few counters on this before I feel really safe with it. So yeah, this is the black-red sack deck card that you need to have. Luckily it's common. Luckily they didn't make this uncommon. Yeah, I think it's around a C, even in the black-red payoff, or the black-red sack deck, but it is a core piece of it. Maybe this is why I don't think the black-red sack deck's really going to work out well, is because none of it looks great. None of it looks great. I do remember Dreadmalkin, and it was not good. C+ in the black-red sack deck for Hobblefiend, we'll say. If you're not in the black-red sack deck, the card's bad. Up next is Igneous Cur. Igneous Cur is 1 and a red for a creature elemental dog at common. It's a 1/2, pay 1 and a red. Igneous Cur gets +2/+0 until end of turn, so it's double fire breathing. Yeah, this card is okay, but not super exciting. The 1/2 for 2 sucks. If it's a 3/2 for 2 that you paid 2 to fire breathe once, it got a little bit better, I guess. But if your opponent's not blocking it, which, you know, they may not want to trade with this piddly little 2-drop, you can get in for a bunch of damage. So, you know, I think this card is like a C, C-. It's a card that goes in aggro decks and doesn't quite get there. There was a Raptor that was very similar to this, but it had Trample in Ixalan, and that made it so much better. This not having Trample is much worse. So I'm actually going to go C- on this. I think you should just cut it most of the time. Unfortunately, this is the other dog that the uncommon signpost card fetches, and it's not great. Up next is Kinetic Auger. Kinetic Auger is 3 and a red for a creature human shaman at uncommon. It's a *4 with trample. Kinetic Auger's power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. Here's a decent payoff. When Kinetic Auger enters the battlefield, discard up to 2 cards, draw that many cards. So as long as this is like a 3/4 that lets me double loot, I'm pretty happy with it. If it's more than that, I'm pretty happy with it. If you're in a real good blue-red spells deck that has like 6 spells sitting in the graveyard, 7, and this is a 7/4 trample, it's going to be a whole lot of damage. The unfortunate thing here is that it's uncommon, which means you're not stacking up a ton of these, so you're not going to go crazy off with it. But I think in the blue-red spells deck, this is the card you need to have. So I think it's like a B- in the blue-red spells deck. If you're not in blue-red spells, you probably don't play this. It's probably just like a super-duper cuttable C-. But in the right spec, in the right deck, B-. Up next is Onake Ogre. Onake Ogre is 2 and a red for a creature ogre warrior at common. It's a 4/2 with flavor text. This card is always begrudgingly okay. Turns out 3 mana 4/2 just does damage, and it works in the red-green big things deck. So it's a C. It's relatively cuttable. If you're in the red-green big things deck, it's a strong C. It's the slash between C+ and C. It's still not great, but it's playable. Up next is Pitchburn Devils. Pitchburn Devils is 4 and a red for a creature devil at common. It's a 3/3. When Pitchburn Devils dies, it deals 3 damage to any target. So yeah, this is a great sack outlet because it's a 3/3, not outlet, sack target, I guess. Sack fodder. It's a 3/3 for 3, which means you can do 3 damage as long as you can attack with it. And then, much like Goblin Arsonist, its little cousin here, your opponent can either not block and take 3, or block and take 3. And then, of course, you can sack it if you have a sack outlet to deal 3 as well. It's to any target, which means it goes to face as well, and or you can kill off a creature. Pitchburn Devils was solid in Innistrad, I think it was in. And, you know, it costs 5, but I think that's fine for the decks that want this. You don't put this in your aggro deck. You don't put this in red-white. You don't put this in red-blue. You put this in red-black. You put this in red-green. So, it's okay. It's, you know, like a C+, I think. Maybe I'm remembering it being very decent in Innistrad, and maybe 6 years ago is a very different time. Oh, it's not 6 years ago to Innistrad, is it? 2011 was yesterday, right? Up next is Sanctum of Shattered Heights. Sanctum of Shattered Heights is 2 and a red for a legendary enchantment Shrine at uncommon. Pay 1 generic mana and discard a land card or shrine card. Sanctum of Shattered Heights deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of shrines you control. This one's okay. It's like a bad pinger. Wait, no, this one doesn't hit face. It is a bad pinger. This one only hits creatures. It only does 1 damage unless you have another shrine down. You have to discard a land, which is not a big deal. Watch Spiky Saturday. You'll see what it's like to have a lot of lands on turn 10. So turning a land into a damage is cute, but it's not going to be killing creatures left and right. So I think this is actually very bad. This could be one of the worst shrines, except possibly the multicolored one. I'm going to go D- on this. I just don't think you play it. Up next is Scorching Dragonfire. Scorching Dragonfire is 1 and a red for an instant at common. Scorching Dragonfire deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead. We had this very recently. It's a good card. It doesn't hit face, that's unfortunate, but it hits creatures, and that's pretty darn decent. Solid, solid, solid B. Up next is Shock. Shock is 1 red mana for an instant at common. Shock deals 2 damage to any target. Shock is always decent. It kills the little X2s, which is an amount of them, and it kills opponents that are at 2 life. Maybe you have Fiery Emancipation or whatever it was, and it deals 6 damage. That's cool. This again is a B. Might actually be a little bit more of a B-. 2 damage isn't quite what you want it to be, but the fact that we have a blue-red spells deck, the fact that we have a Burn Matters deck, probably does just keep this a B. So B for Shock. Up next is Soul Seer. Remember when I said there's a lot of burn in this set? 2 and a red for an instant at uncommon. Soul Seer deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. That permanent loses indestructible until end of time. Turn. Not until end of time. Only until end of turn. 3 mana for 5 damage to a creature at instant speed is kind of crazy. Like, kind of crazy. We just saw 3 damage to a creature at instant speed for 2 mana. So 5 damage is huge. Indestructible doesn't matter too much. Obviously that's more for constructed, for killing gods and stuff like that. But yeah, this is just a very good card. Solid burn. I think we can go B+ on it. It's going to kill a massive amount of the format. Kills planeswalkers, which is a nice little bonus, but doesn't typically matter during in limited. It matters the most in core sets where we do have 5, or in this case 6 planeswalkers, but still doesn't super matter. B+ for Soul Seer. Up next is Spell Gorger Weird. I guess this is our payoff for blue-red spells, other than Prowess. 2 and a red for a creature weird at common. It's a 2/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Spell Gorger Weird. We had this in War of the Spark, and it did work in blue-red spells decks in War of the Spark. And it'll do the same thing here, I think. It's common, thankfully, so if you're blue-red spells, you're going to want to stack these, and they're going to be really, really good. In blue-red spells, this is a strong C+, maybe even a weak B-, just because this is so important for the blue-red spells deck. It'd be nice if this had trample like Hound did, but it does not. And it does not have the partner weird, unfortunately, from War of the Spark. Up next is Subira Tulzidi Caravaner. Yup, legendary Caravaner, legendary creature, human, shaman, at rare. It's a 2/3 with haste. Pay 1 generic mana. Another target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Pay 1 and a red and tap, discard your hand. Until end of turn, whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. 2/3 for 3 with haste. Meh, but okay. I guess that's better than a 2/2 for haste. 2/2 for 3 with haste. Making another power 2 or less can't be blocked is okay if I have them. Discarding my hand so that whenever creature I control with power 2 or less deals combat damage, I draw a card is cute. There's a lot going on with this card, and a lot that you have to do to ultimately draw a card and get in for some unblockable damage. Obviously most at home in the red-white deck, just because you're going to be able to get those creatures in, and because she doesn't tap for the first ability, you can tap 4 mana and make 4 of your creatures unblockable, which actually probably makes her just flat out nutty for the red-white Boros deck. If you are a very low curve, low power Boros deck, I think this is a strong B, possibly even B+ in it. Otherwise, I don't think she has a home. I don't think she goes in red-green or red-blue or red-black. I think she is a red-white-gold card. So yeah, in that red-white deck, solid B. Otherwise, C. Up next is Sure Strike. Sure Strike is 1 and a red for an instant at common. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike. I love this card. It kills so many things. So many things. This is a combat trick that'll give a C+ to, in that I'll play 2 of them. I will, if I'm an aggro deck, if I'm a creature deck, if I have creatures, I am a person who will look to find a spot for this first card, which makes it a C+, rather than a C-, where most combat tricks are, where it's kind of like, if you have a spot. Here, I make a spot for the first one at least. C+ for Sure Strike. Up next is Terror of the Peaks. Terror of the Peaks is 3 red for a creature dragon at Mythic. It's a 5/4 flyer. Spells your opponents cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. Pretty cool. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage to that creature's power, equal to that creature's power to any target. Look at that. A Mythic dragon is good. Shockingly. This card's great. It's a 5/4 flyer for 5, which is nutty. Your opponents have to basically pay life to target it with their removal, so it's at least going to bolt them, and then any additional creatures that you play just ping your opponent. This card's great. It's an A+. It's a snap first pick. It's super, super, super good. Up next is Thrill of Possibility. Thrill of Possibility is 1 and a red for an instant at common. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Blue-red spells deck, gonna love this. That's about it. That's about it. You play this in blue-red spells, and you don't necessarily play it anywhere else. It's okay. It refills your hand. Boros aggro sometimes is kind of okay with like one of these, just because they will flood out at some point. So turning that land hopefully into 2 more better things is decent. But yeah, I think this is like a C in most cases, and in the blue-red spells deck, it's like a C+. Up next is Traitorous Greed. Traitorous Greed makes me sad. It's 3 and a red for a sorcery at uncommon. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Add 2 mana of any one color. I have not read that sentence before. This is the only way to steal an opponent's creature in red and black, which is the whole point of sacrifice decks, or at least the sacrifice decks that I enjoy. And there's this one card at uncommon, which means the red-black sacrifice deck where you steal your opponent's creatures doesn't help out. This is a threat and effect, which I don't tend to play, but if you're playing an aggro deck, they're sort of a way to finish the game, because you take their biggest blocker and turn it into one of your attackers, but they're not that great, so I'm just at a C for Traitorous Greed. Up next is Transmogrify. Transmogrify is 3 and a red for a sorcery at rare. Exile target creature. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. That player puts that card onto the battlefield, then shuffles the rest into their library. Does your opponent have their best creature on the board? This card's pretty good. Does your opponent have any creature on the board that is not their best creature? Taking a gamble. Taking a real gamble. So I don't know about this. I don't know about Transmogrify. I think odds are people are going to overrate it. I think somebody's going to cast this and they're going to turn a 4/4 into a 1/1 and they're going to think it's amazing. You can cast it on your own stuff, but you are still gambling. So again, let's flip that around. Do you have the worst creature in your deck on the battlefield, or a crappy token? If so, you get to upgrade it. Do you have anything other than your worst creature? You might hit your worst creature. You might downgrade your card. So I think this is, a very passable Pack 1 rare. I think it's a gamble, and I don't like gambling in my Magic games. Unless it's Momir Vig, in which case I love it. So I'm going to start this at like a D, but I'm going to keep an eye on it. I think it is bad, though. Up next is Turn to Slag. Turn to Slag is 3 red for a sorcery at common. Turn to Slag deals 5 damage to target creature. Hey, look. More creature burn. Destroy all equipment attached to that creature. That doesn't really matter for this format. This is just yet another 5 damage to a creature. Creatures, if you're playing against a red deck, your creatures are not going to live. Your creatures are not going to live. This is a strong C+. 5 mana hurts it a little bit. Sorcery hurts it a little bit. Red hurts it a little bit. But it's still 5 damage. It's still going to kill a massive amount of the format. And if you get a little bit of extra stuff out of it, sure. So C+ for Turn to Slag. Up next is Turret Ogre. Turret Ogre has Reach. Turret Ogre is a 3 and a red creature ogre warrior with Reach. It's at common, it's a 4/3, and it has Reach. When Turret Ogre enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with power 4 or greater, Turret Ogre deals 2 damage to each opponent. Also, it has reach. Nobody remembers this card has reach. I just did that whole bit, and I'm not going to remember that it has reach. Yeah, it's a 4/3 for 4, which is okay. It has reach. And if you do have another creature with power 4, getting to shock your opponent, that's nifty. That's cool. That's an upside. This is like a C+. It's just got enough extra stuff on it that it's fine. C+ for Turret Ogre. Up next is Unleash Fury. Unleash Fury is 1 and a red for an instant at on common. Double the power of target creature until end of turn. Not double strike. Double the power. Double the fun. I don't know. It's instant speed. This is still going to do exactly what double strike at instant speed is, which is, oops, you didn't block my 4/4 and now you're dead. Yeah, the fact that this doesn't save your creature, like whatever the card we just had in Ikoria was, is a pain, but it's still that whole thing of this will kill you out of nowhere, so you have to respect it, I guess. It's uncommon, which means you also still shouldn't really play around it because it's uncommon. So I think this is like a C-. I'm not going to play this. I'm going to lose to this a lot, though. Our final card, second last card, is Volcanic Geyser. Volcanic Geyser is X red for an instant at uncommon that is, surprise, burn. Volcanic Geyser deals X damage to any target. It's not quite Banefire, but it's instant speed, and it is going to kill your opponent for 8 damage sometimes, or it's going to kill that X2 that you need to kill for 4 mana. It's a very good card. I've played with Volcanic Geyser before. It's solid. It's an A, I think. The fact that this kills your opponent, it's a fireball. It is a fireball. Kills the opponent, I think makes this an A. Instant speed is crazy as well. Like, just a solid A for Volcanic Geyser. I think I would first pick this out of some packs if the rare was bad. Our final card for the day is Volcanic Salvo. Volcanic Salvo is 10 generic mana, red. For a sorcery at rare, this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. Volcanic Salvo deals 6 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. It's more burn, except... why? So if we have a whole bunch of creatures, this is cheap. And it's 6 damage to 2 creatures, which I guess is better than us having to cast 2 Soul Seers or turn to Slags. But if we don't have power, this is uncastable most likely, whereas those other cards are not. So this does not target players, unfortunately, at all. This only targets creatures and planeswalkers. So I don't know. I don't think this card's very good, and I think the times where it's going to be good, it's just going to be... it's going to be good, but I don't know. I'm going to have to play with this card. My instinct is that it's a D. I just think there's too many times where this is going to be too hard to cast, and there's so much other burn that we saw. I would take 2 Soul Seers over this card any day of the week. Any day of the week. Any day of the week. So I think we're going to go with a D on this. Maybe it's low. Maybe this card's actually amazing. We'll have to see. But that's going to wrap it up for the red set review. Tomorrow we will, or not tomorrow, the next video, we will finish off with green artifacts and lands. So stay tuned for that. Let me know what cards you agree with, disagree with. What's your take on Volcanic Salvo in the comments down below. As always, you can find me in the various places on Twitter and Facebook and Twitch, like these fine folks up here who have been raiding all day. Make sure you're checking out Twitch. We have fun over there. We race marbles, etc. But we're going to wrap this all up. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all for next time for the green set review.